Hey folks, hello, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Welcome to the second session of day 2 of our virtual summit, Bring Your Own Bold. If you're joining us for the first time, welcome. If you've been to a few sessions, really hope you've enjoyed them so far. I certainly have. It's been really insightful so far, and we're going to continue that with the next few sessions today. And this one was added a little late to the calendar, but I'm so glad it was. Because if you could see our Slack channel here at Shaped By, we have a little inspo Slack channel of which brands we really admire. And when it comes to the most admired and visually appealing brands in B2B, Zendesk is always part of that conversation. But getting to the nub of this conversation today, visual appeal ultimately is not really what appeals to shareholders, or not for the most part anyway. They want growth and they want it quickly. And really growth comes with understanding customers' needs and marrying that to business collaboration. And one of the most important collaborations in that sense is between marketing and creative. So today, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Zendesk VP of Creative, Erin Pinkley, and Prelini Udayan-Chiechi, the company's SVP of Global Marketing, Demand and Growth, to learn how teamwork makes the dream work. And in Zendesk's case, how it's also helped customers, employees, and partners fall in love with this iconic brand, certainly iconic in my opinion anyway, all while business growth never got lost in the process. So welcome both you guys. How are you doing?
Wonderful.
Hi, great. Glad to be here.
Very lucky to have you both this side of the pond. Erin, I know you're usually based in the States, but you're over in Italy. And again, as I've said before, taking time out of your vacation, I'm so thankful to you for doing this. I'll start with you, Erin, actually first, if that's okay, because you know, I'm a fanboy, to put it mildly, of the Zendesk brand, as you know. But as a global business, that brand lives in so many different places, you know, different regions, various teams using it in decks, events, and stuff like that. Key to all of this really is a unified and consistent brand experience. And from your point of view, what's the key to that at Zendesk?
Yeah, great question. And I think it's almost like the $1 million answer, right? Because especially it's not just a global brand, but it's a brand that continues to grow. Any brand wants to continue to grow. And so it's not like you solve it for one moment in time, right? It's you have to continue solving it. So I think the short answer is internal alignment and systems. However, there's a very long story there, which is how you get people aligned internally. Because at the end of the day, yes, there are documents of, messaging and guidelines where everything is documented. And if you have a question, there's an answer to it, right? However, there's a lot of things maybe our guidelines don't cover, right? Or the average employee may not be prepared to speak to the brand on a moment's notice. Why would they? They're focused on their part of the business, right? And so that's why I think like helping people feel the brand is so important. We go above and beyond, just for example, to make our offices look uniquely Zendesk. Why do we do that, right? It's an office. It's just a place to work, right? But then what happens is that when every employee is experiencing the brand firsthand, that experience is then translated as they interact with the customer, who then goes to our website that feels kind of the same, and then goes to an event and feels, again, kind of the same. And everything becomes this ecosystem that is like self-reinforcing. And I think that, maybe not every pixel is exactly perfect. Certainly there's typefaces that are wrong sometimes. That's fine. But at the end of the day, the feeling is consistent. And I think as human beings, the feeling is what we remember at the end of the day, right? And so that's why I think that is so, that's really the goal. And then the documentation can follow and is there to kind of catch us. That's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose, Prelini, Erin obviously puts a lot of effort into helping you feel the brand and your marketing teams feel the brand as well. But really, when it comes to kind of, I suppose, how customers and prospects feel the brand, that's driven, just as much by you and your teams because you've got that deep insight into the customer. So I suppose you and Erin obviously have to have a really strong relationship to kind of marry those two things together. Is there a particular secret to the strength of that relationship between marketing and creative between you and Erin?
I think it's something that's really, so Erin's been at Zendesk for 8 years and I've been at Zendesk for 6.5 years. And the longer you tend to work with someone, like I respect Erin immensely and what her and her team do and what they bring to the table, like right down to the values that we create. And as Erin explained, it's right down to the photography or the look and feel in the office, like even the events that we go to. We've got a certain Zendesk scent, the Spotify music that we would play in a soundtrack, like that attention to detail across the board makes a huge difference. And I think Erin and I being part of the same leadership team is I'll be sharing, how we're performing from a business perspective, where it's pipeline and bookings and what's working in the business and what's not. And Erin's exposed to those areas. So she sees what's important to us and where we might be having successes and where we might be lagging. Like her and her team are involved in like a lot of the briefings for all our major campaigns go through Erin's team. And so even though she's part of the business, so it's not just that creative side, she's seeing the business side, and that I think that helps then what we see as the output that comes along. And I think what's been really great as well is just that reinforcement, like, whether my teams decide, it's very easy if people are in a rush, they want to get things out the door, they want to say, I'm going to just work with an agency. Like Erin and the team do a really good job to onboard our agencies. So we're working with the agencies that have the same look and feel. And sometimes we might have people say, I'm in a rush, and they don't work with the same agencies. They'll come back and say, Prelini, I did this and I got in trouble from the creative team. I'm like, well, you shouldn't have gone outside the process. And so I think it's just as important, like Erin and I are that team one and we're on that same side, because if we are, then it's going to allow the rest of the teams to understand why this is important to be able to ensure we're protecting the brand.
Yeah, absolutely. And, having that tight process and that tight collaboration and really making creative part of that conversation from the outset. I don't know whether you can tell us, is that something that is commonplace in kind of other B2B organizations, or in your experience, is it fairly unique to Zendesk?
Erin, did you want to go first?
Yeah, that's probably a question to be honest.
Yeah. You mean having a process in general?
Oh, like us, the collaboration that we have working.
That's the nature of what you guys do so well.
I think it comes with maturity. I also think it comes from the heritage of the company, right? I think Zendesk, brand and design and creative has always been important to Zendesk. I think in a lot of ways it helped Zendesk be this distinctive brand that was set apart from the rest. And I think that, and so for that reason, it's kind of just I think there's an understanding in the culture of the company that this is an important, it's not a nice to have. It's like, it helps to make your work successful. And that's kind of the way we approach the work as well. Is that like, it's not about making it pretty, it's about making it work harder for you and making what you're making more valuable. Yeah. That makes sense.
And I think building on that, a big part of it is in most organizations, you will see brand. You've got agencies that everyone works with agencies to some extent. And it's the level of what our creative team gets involved in versus what you would see in external companies. And I think that collaboration is stronger because how much brand is held within the teams itself. So what lives within the organization and the processes that are being put in place allows for that stronger connection. Whereas that's why in larger companies, you might see the brand more fragmented as it gets lower down into the fields, right down when you get to the salespeople, you might see PowerPoint presentations different. And I've seen so many people get up on stage and the brand template is just not the brand template or the font size that you would expect. But I think it's having that in-house team and so embedded from our product all the way to our brand, to our marketing efforts across the board. That's what's allowed us to have that close synergy and to be able to have that strong brand presence and continue to keep that presence in everything we do.
Yeah, it's definitely a theme of this whole summit, which is, if it's embedded in the culture, often from the top down as well, and often from in some cases that we've spoken to speakers during the event, from day one or even from day -1, having that embedded in the culture, ultimately from the founders, is often a massive part of it. I just wonder, Prelini, is there a specific example kind of for our audience of where you've collaborated with Erin and her team to kind of really great effect?
There's actually two I'm going to use. So events. Most companies run large scale events. We run a series of events called showcases that'll run this year. It's running across 15 cities across the globe. What's really great with the collaboration with Erin's team, it's the process all the way through. So it's not just the look and the feel prior to anyone actually coming to the event, but it's how the events are actually staged and put on. So from how the stage setup is, to the presentation decks that take place, to the plant and the lifestyles in the expo area, to the scent that even appears in the bathrooms. Like, that's the attention to detail that is very consistent. And if you go to a Zendesk event across the globe, wherever you are, we've had partners that will say they've sponsored like XYZ, and it's that same feel you get. And I think that's what's pretty amazing. That's as a result of this collaboration. The second is, I always love, a couple of years ago during COVID, we launched the Zendesk morning show. It was something that came through very closely, and we were working with an agency. But what I loved about Erin's creative team that brought it out, they created the set design. It was very different to something the agency hadn't even thought about. And it was the Zendesk look and feel that was brought to it, that brought it to life. So having collaboration like that and bringing that experience and expertise from, as Erin spoke about, our values and our offices and experience, we brought that to the set design, and that whole show that rolled out as part of it was all part embedded in that experience. So we made it that Zendesk feel even in the virtual rollout of this experience and show during COVID. So that's two I can point to, but I've got hundreds that I can go through because that collaboration is just so strong.
Erin, do you have any more just out of interest? Is there anything else that springs to mind for you?
I think also, Prelini runs our regional marketing, right? Which means like that is a tremendous part of our audience. And so, I'm in the US, and so we, and headquarters is in the US. However, translating the brand and making the brand memorable and relevant in each region is so important. And Prelini and our team have been such amazing partners in helping us to translate that, right? Like, our jokes that we make in the US make no sense in Germany, right? And why should they, right? And so I think that takes that means that she and I have to be really candid with one another, and be able to take hard feedback and be like, hey, this is not going to land with the people that it needs to land with. And so I think there's a lot of really good moments, but there's also like a space for that critical feedback as well, right? But it's all in service of the customer, and I think that's what makes it really strong, because you can see that it works.
Yeah, and Erin touched on a really good point as well. Like, even photography, if we think about translation of certain photography, we're very much at Zendesk about diversity in everything that we do. But even certain diversity in certain markets might not necessarily apply. Like, let's say, take something simple as tattoos or long fingernails. It's like thinking about that and really how that works when we do rollouts in each market is super, super critical.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we were just having a conversation with a client about a sustainability message, which works in some countries, but actually in other countries, they just push back on that. We're not there yet, or they're not there yet necessarily, which, I'm not going to dig anybody out, but ultimately that's just where they are as a business and where they are as a culture. So, it's really, really crucial part of what you guys do, I suppose, as a global business all the time. Sorry if I'm going through these questions a bit quick fire. I know that, actually, when you look at it, 25 minutes is not a lot of time to get through everything that I really want to get through with you guys. So I'm going to move on a little bit and take the conversation to kind of Erin and your creative team, because we've just actually, the last session that we just had was all about kind of effective creative leadership. And one of the topics that arose there was the fact that, to really kind of add value as a creative team and to kind of prove your worth, I suppose, you need to kind of move beyond just kind of being seen as, I suppose, the production department, the pixel pushers, as somebody put it. You really need to kind of learn and speak the language of business, and especially when communicating with Prelini's team, the language of marketing as well. So was that something that came naturally to you, and also your wider team as well? Do you have to focus on helping them to kind of get up to speed with that kind of, I suppose, the language of business, so to speak?
I think about this a lot. And I think about this, I come from the agency world. And so coming in-house means that, oh, wow, my product is not just pure creativity anymore. I'm here to help this business, right? So that was kind of a wake-up moment for me. But I think in general, I think you could certainly make that argument that, like, hey, I went to art school. Like, I don't need to get into the weeds of the business, right? You could certainly make that argument. But I think the counter argument is that understanding the business actually makes the work better and makes more sustainable work that's relevant to more people. For example, we had a product launch event a couple weeks ago, and I got to sit in the audience and experience all the work the team had done. And, and I was actually, this question is always on my mind. How much time do I help the team spend on like understanding, the financial state of the business, understanding, where, what our goals are as a marketing org versus blue sky art inspiration, right? Like what's the balance there? So I think about that a lot. But I'm sitting there at our product launch, and I saw on the screen, like, not only like this beautiful look and feel, and like our tagline is out there and the music is cool, but then it got into the fine details of every product feature. Like we're talking like the button was animated just right and it felt exactly right. And I'm sitting there thinking like this level of detail could only come from a team who knows how to get really nerdy, and just like not afraid to roll up their sleeves and be like, no, tell me exactly what that button does. And then what does it do, right? And so I think, this comes from not only understanding like how the product works, but also what that moment meant for our customers, right? Like they've taken time out of their day. Who are they? What do they care about? And making it work for them and making it land with them. This is what Prelini is talking about. Like, yeah, we're sitting in the same leadership meetings and we're getting the same information. And so, and I think that's also the definition of being strategic, right? Not asking one person to do work for you that asks another team to do work for you, but it's about everyone being presented with the same problem and solving it together. And I think that's, that makes not only a strategic creative team, but a strategic marketing team, a strategic company. So I think, it's kind of a long answer there, but I think that I do truly believe, and I don't think there's really another, if for an in-house team, I think that's why it's so exciting to be an in-house team as well, right? Because I think as an agency, you're always kind of like one step removed and always kind of catching up. So that's where I'm at right now with that big question, but I'm sure I'll continue to think about it as my career goes on.
Yeah, and again, during the last debate, I asked the question, is it a challenge sometimes for your teams to kind of spend time understanding and getting into that wider business context and mindset when they've got the day job to do? And our panelists pushed back and said it is part of the day job. That is exactly, that is a really crucial part of the day job. Is that how you see it as well?
100%. Yes. And I think that, we used to be a small enough company where you could, every new employee actually sat down in Zendesk and like played agent for a couple of days and learned how to do that. And I think that if you do that once, that stays with you for your entire tenure at that company, right? And then you're making decisions from there, because those are, again, it's about those feelings. It sticks with you. Like being a customer support agent is terrifying. You don't know what that person, like the person on the other end you don't know what they're going to say, what they're going to ask you, right? And they're asking you about very complicated software and how to use it, right? That's a very vulnerable place to be, and you need to help them. So I think that's, it's like, and I see them getting worked up, like, and I think that if everybody can have those feelings, right, it helps, that becomes motivating for the work and makes the work like a lot more nuanced and have a whole new level of detail and meaning that, eventually, again, helps a customer understand what we're trying to say.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Prelini, just wanted to move on a little bit because my next question is kind of about, I suppose, it's in the title of the session, really, the business of brand. Because, I suppose brand equity, is a term that we use a lot here at Shape By, especially with our clients, but it's quite notoriously hard to measure. But I suppose how much of Zendesk's kind of recent growth and success do you attribute to the strength and consistency of the brand that we've been talking about so much here?
So firstly, brand is so important, and there are companies that actually measure the value of that brand, and so that does take place today. I think for us, the brand underpins everything that you do as an organization. So you think about it as at the foundation, but you have to have the building blocks in an organization to have that revenue and growth that goes with that. You've got to have the right innovations, the right products, the right solutions, the right services you offer, the right team in place, the right after-sales support care that you would have, the right, investing in the partnership ongoing with the team. So all of that is part of the strategy to grow a business. It's not having that strong brand and think that brand is sufficient. You've got to be constantly investing. Like if we're not investing in innovation for our customers are going to have to start looking elsewhere. We've got to be thinking like, what are we doing to help them move their business forward? Where are we envisaging where the CX and EX space is going to be in the next 5 to 10 years? And how do we help our customers get there? Erin spoke about the agent experience. The agent experience has completely changed. How do we make that less terrifying? How do we, people often invest in the end user customer, the customer experience that the customer has. But what about your employees that have to deliver that experience? What are we doing to make their lives easier so they can deliver that remarkable experience that your customers are anticipating or expecting from you? So all of that, the brand has to be there, but that underpins, but you have to have all these other layers on top. And a big part of all that layering, you could have the right technology and the right processes, services, but if you don't have the right team, like people work with people. I'm so proud of our organization and the brands we have. We have these most amazing brands that we work with, but people buy from people as well. And so making sure you've got those right teams in place that actually can support, and that's all the way through across your organization, from the first person picking up the phone to every interaction, all the way to your executives that you have. You have to have those people that are committed to the company, the brand, and wanting to see the growth of the organization overall.
Yeah, and actually just a question on that then. So, well, there's a couple really. I'll try and figure out the best way of putting it. I suppose, you've built this brand. The brand is your people to a certain extent, because ultimately that is the experience that your customers and partners and employees, all kind of experience together. How do you build that culture, and how do you get the right people on board? How do you make sure that you get the right people on board? And how do you know when they are the right people that are going to, live and breathe that brand?
I'll start. Do you want to start, Erin? You start.
That's a big one. I think it's one by saying things that are true, right? I think that in some ways, like you could, a brand could put they can say anything, right? And you can make your tagline whatever you want it to be. But again, people are only going to remember it and embrace it if it's true and relevant and makes them feel something. And so I think that's where, I think digging for the truth is the hardest part, right? Because you want to land on something that is truly unique, right? What is the thing? And that takes some digging. It's hard. It's very existential, or it can be, right? And so I think it's through that process that a lot of that alignment is built, in my opinion, because it's vulnerable, right? It's that, again, a business is made of people, and people are coming together to talk about it, to say what they think, to kind of put their, stick their neck out and, have a real opinion that, might not be popular. So, and again, the best brands in the world also are saying the same thing internally as customers are saying about them, right? And the job is to really close that gap. And so I think when things get misaligned internally, right, you always have customers really holding you accountable. And when you change what you're saying internally, the customer's going to call you out for that. So I think that's also an interesting balance. And that's why, internal alignment, this relationship is so important, right? Because customers are counting on us. And that's always keeping us in check.
And also building on that from Erin, it's so important, like she said, it's telling the truth. We put the customers at the heart of everything we do. And if your customers are at the heart and you're building your vision and your mission and your values around that, and everyone's walking in that same direction and speaking that same language, you're going to move in the right direction. But it's so critical as part of the hiring as well. So our executives have to be inspiring around those values and believe it themselves. It's making sure it's embedded in the culture, and knowing as you're bringing in new employees into the culture, how are you actually indoctrinating them? How are you bringing them to the organization? How did they learn and feel those same values as part of the process, that they feel everything Zendesk is? So they are then showing that out when they're actually meeting with customers as well. So I think it's super critical to have that right vision and mission in the company, have the right values, and make sure you're hiring people that share that same value system as well. And
just quite an obvious question really, I suppose, but does having the strong brand that you do, does that make it easier to hire the right people? Because the chances are they're coming in believing in your brand.
I don't think it's about necessarily easier. I think a brand, people are attracted to a brand, but it's what is it that person's role is going to be, and how are they going to play a part to growing the company to that next level. I think that's going to be super critical. And a brand is different across different markets as well. So you've got stronger brands in some markets and it's not as strong in other markets. So, there's different works. Like a lot of people on this call with smaller brands out there, they need to do a little bit more harder work to convince people why to come over. And I think this is why the vision and the mission and the values, your customer base you have, that's all super strong. Like being able to share that's what people are often attracted to as well. Especially like, what are you giving back? Like right now, it's also, what are we doing to give back to the community? And that's a huge part of what our brand's been about. And people want to work with brands that are actually giving back, and they can see themselves in those brands as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The heart emojis are going off on that one. So yeah, definitely agree with that. Listen, Erin, Prelini, thank you both so much. I did have one more question that was kind of about how important it is for each of you to kind of have the belief of one another in what you do. I think for a start, speaking to you both today, I think that's probably a bit of a given, really. I think we're obviously going to say that's really, really important. I actually want to skip, because we've got 5 minutes for some audience questions, and we've got a couple of good ones in. So I kind of wanted to put those to you. So I like this one, actually. I do like this one. So you guys obviously get on very well and have a long-standing professional relationship. Do you always agree, or is there ever conflict between marketing and creative strategic requirements? Who wants to go first on that one?
I think Erin put it nicely. We had an offsite a couple of weeks ago. We don't always agree, but you shouldn't always agree. What was the constructive, Erin? There was a really nice word that you used for the process. And you said, do you remember that word?
Radical candor? No.
Yeah, it was radical. It was like the way that we give feedback, and it's like helping us to be better. It was just the way that it came about. It was like, do you remember that?
Constructive criticism?
Maybe it was constructive, but it was something along the lines of how do we help each other? But ultimately, if we say yes to everything and don't push back, we don't get the best outcomes. And I think we've just learned in our time together that the more we push back, whatever the end result is, we're all happy with the end result. If you don't speak your mind early enough, then you're not going to get to that result you're all happy with as well.
Yeah, totally. I agree. I also think it's about, again, it's about being presented with the same problem. So it might be like, why are we not on the same thing? And then I'm like, you must know something that I don't, right? And so I think it's a matter of like getting on each other's page. And I had the opportunity to play bocce ball with Prelini and found out she's incredibly competitive. Way more than you could ever imagine a person to be. And I was like, everything made sense. I was like, oh, I want to be on Prelini's team because I want to win, right? And Prelini's going to get us there. So I'm like, yes. And so I just think it's about anyway, so yes, of course, no, we don't always agree, nor should we, right? But I think great work comes out of friction and working through that, and being in a space where you can be honest with one another, right? Like the work is going to be bad if we just agree all the time. So anyway, I'm on Team Prelini.
Likewise, I'm on Team Erin here.
I think everyone needs to be on Team Prelini, to be honest, otherwise they're going to get smashed. But last question, and I think I've got a funny feeling this might have come from our agency MD, I'm not sure, but what are your main priorities when selecting agency partners? Experience, chemistry, recommendations? Is there a set process? Don't know who wants to take charge of that one.
Erin, first. Yeah, you start.
Yeah. One is quality of work, I would say, is number one. I think if, we have a pretty high bar for quality that we look for. And so that's always our first entry point. Do we admire them? Do we admire work they've done with other companies? And then I think that the B2B experience can be really important. It's not a must have, but it's, I think we see B2B through kind of a B2C lens and have that kind of tone to our brand. And so working with an agency that has worked on both B2B clients and B2C is incredibly important. And then, we're an enterprise level company. And so that level of experience and being able to work at the maturity level that we have, I think is also super important. Not to say that couldn't come from a newer agency. But again, it comes from, I think at the end of the day, it comes from that chemistry of do we understand each other? Are we going to be able to have real talk? Similar to this relationship, right? Of can we be real? Can we say what we think? Can we make hard decisions together? I think that's kind of those are at the top of my list. But what about you, Phil?
And I think Yeah, I think what I look for, I trust Erin and the team explicitly when they choose the agency. But what I'm looking at from a business perspective, are they going to be business partners to us? Are they just going to come with the creative and not really understand like the end goal, what we're trying to achieve? So for me, even in the pitches, it's looking at how are they actually representing, like where do they see the measures of success metrics? Like what do they see successes? Because if they're not even bringing any numbers to the table and they're not bringing, if it's more on the creative side and not like how we're moving in the business value, then I would worry, are they necessarily the right partners for us?
Absolutely. And just a final question then. So do you guys collaborate together on when kind of you might need a new agency partner? Is that something that you also get together on, or is that more one of you or your respective teams?
Definitely. I think we think about that really holistically. Again, like we don't want, you never want your work to feel siloed or that it came from like one agency that wasn't talking to anyone else, right? That's like that would always be a red flag. And so we like to work together to make sure, any agency has the right information, right? Collectively, that they understand both the business context and the, what's new with the brand guidelines, for example. And so I think that can only come from a collaboration.
Yeah. And also it's important, like for Erin and I, because our organizations are so large, and you think about getting all the way down to agencies in Italy that we might need, or an agency in Poland. So we can't be a part of every one of those. And so having the brand guidelines, having really the brand processes that we're enabling our teams to be able to have those discussions and make those decisions. And I think that's critical for that empowerment, as we grow, to be able to make sure we're maintaining that standardization, regardless of which level is having that communication.
Absolutely. And once again, I promise that wasn't my question. It was just on the list. But for anyone out there who wants to work with Zendesk, now you know what you got to do. Listen, we're ever so slightly over time, but that's cool because it was a wonderful conversation. Prelini, Erin, thank you both so much. Prelini, enjoy your Peloton ride tonight. Erin, enjoy the rest of your holiday. Thank you so much to you both. And everyone tuned in, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.